Today's sponsor is Vibration. Vibration provides designer hydration packs designed to make you look cool, keep your stuff safe, and stay hydrated at music festivals and events. Their holographic designs add to your festival ensemble. Make sure you get your pack using promo code BB Media Industries LLC to save 10% on your new pack on Vibration.com. Oh, and one more thing. Free shipping on orders over $75. Hashtag life's a party. Stay hydrated. Hello and welcome to another rousing edition of Trending Topics with BB. I am your humble host, Brooke Brown, hence the BB. Big news in this podcast world. This podcast can now be found on its own official website called trendingtopicswithbbpodcast.com. Yes, it is a mouthful, but again, that is trendingtopicswithbbpodcast.com. You can find all links to wherever platform you prefer to listen to this podcast, as well as social media, if you like our Facebook, Twitter, and just for those out there, the Instagram page is the same handle as the Twitter, which is TT with BB. And speaking of finding this podcast, I am loving all of you out there that are new listeners that are spreading the word about this podcast. In fact, if you have left a favorable rating or comment on iTunes or the Stitcher platform, I salute you. This podcast is a small potatoes podcast, but I enjoy talking to people of different industries or of the same industries about different or the same topics, as well as giving you my 2 cents whenever I deem necessary on the bonus episodes, which I call the Soapbox. So again, thank you so much for finding this podcast. Log on to trendingtopicswithbbpodcast.com for any information and updates regarding this podcast. Now, my guest on this episode is a fellow friend within the Trance family. Yes, I'm a huge Trance music fan. If you have listened to previous episodes about that I've had on this podcast talking to people within the Trance family as well as well-known artists, feel free to go back and listen. You'll kind of get a little bit of a backstory. But this conversation was great because this is I don't want to, for lack of better words, up-and-coming producer duo, but they've been around for a few years. I've been a fan of this duo. I've actually reviewed them on my other platform, my music blog, the Love of Music Project. I'm talking about the duo Sean and Xander. If you have not checked out their music, well, it's never too late. But one half of this duo, Alex, sat down with me to talk about trance music, his beginnings, and where he sees the scene continuing to grow in different cities. So without further ado, I'll give you my chat with Alex Lueth. Let's just start at the beginning, because we've been talking all day, but I like to start with how people got into trance and why trance. Because people may or may not know why I love trance, but everybody has their own story of who and when and how long. As you can tell, like, trance fans always talk about, oh, I've loved trance since this time. It's kind of funny. But start with, like, your story.
Well, I was always listening to, like, the radio growing up, because that was, like, the primary method for people to discover music. And I think I heard some of the early, like, Paul Van Dyke records and Paul Oakenfold records, and they really resonated with me. I was like, whoa, what is going on here? There's, like, excellent melodies, but there's, like, synthesizers going on, and I loved synthesizers, like, growing up. I had, like, this little keyboard with, like, hundreds of, like, built-in sounds, basically, and I would play on it. And then I also grew up listening to, like, the theme tracks of, like, Blade Runner, the Vangelis sounds, and so I heard these tracks, like, these sounds, and I discovered it was a genre of music, and I was like, whoa, I had to find more records like these ones, because they had so much soul in them, so much emotion, like the Southern Sun record, even like Tiesto's, like, Elements of Life, things like that. And I began searching for more and more electronic dance music, and then I discovered, what I'm liking is now called trance. And I was like, okay. So then I started like Googling like what is trance. I don't even know if they had Google like back then. Actually, it was like 10 years ago or something.
Yeah.
So then I was like, I found more and more records, and then I found some early like Marcus Schultz records and some early like Mike Push records, and I started looking for more and more. It became like a little side hobby you want. You're like when you find a record that just resonates with you and it clicks, and it's something that can stay with you for a long time and that you absolutely love. And I really got into that feeling. And then from there, I just discovered more DJs, more music, and my passion pretty much just grew from there.
So it's funny because a lot of people say Paul Van Dyke, Paul Oakenfold, and BT, and Marcus, like Tiesto. We all name them. It's just funny how it like they have the longevity that they do. And do you think it's because they've stayed true to that and they've found their sounds and their niche? Is that something that, like, in trance is different than other electronic dance music?
Well, I think it's pretty common for people to experiment with different sounds, obviously. Even as an artist, I'm doing that. I'm trying. We have several different records out at several different tempos with different sounds. But yeah, I think that they obviously stayed true to trance the whole time, which helped maintain their fan base, and ensured those fans that they were gonna be on their side with the music that they produced, and that they could trust that the things that they were going to come out with next would be trance. And that brand recognition grew with those artists, and so did their fan base, basically.
Right. So the next question is, it's interesting because when we think dance music, for me, I guess for me, dance music was trance, but before trance, like you mentioned that. Like, a lot of us who have been listening to electronic dance music for most of our lives didn't really think of it as separate genres till kind of recently, if you think about it. Like, this is techno, this is electronica.
Now there's so many genres.
Yeah,
and subgenres.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that there's even subgenres within trance now. How it's like there's uplifting, there's vocal, there's euphoric, but they kind of all like why is everything so segmented now? Because trance was uplifting or whatever you want. I mean, music is subjective, so why do we have to have a name for every little change that has evolved over time? Because like I kind of had the same thing. I found it when in the late 90s, I was listening to Oakenfold and everything, and Paul and Marcus. And it was still kind of underground at the time because back then, actually, I found it by a local radio station, but they don't have those radio stations anymore, obviously. So, but it was never called, this is trance. They would just play a record, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was what was hip at the time. So why is it so segmented now? And kind of a two-parter, is that led to why we were talking earlier about how it's kind of a genre that implodes from within because everybody is so passionate about who they like and why they like it.
We kind of get stuck on one thing.
Yeah.
Like, I only listen to psytrance, or I only listen to uplifting trance, instead of like, I just listen to trance.
Yeah.
I really wish people would look at it more as like an overall genre like trance or like pop music or like rap. But there are so many different styles of trance. And I think that does go back to what I was saying is like how I was searching for records back in the day, like trying to find new things that I really liked and really resonated with me. Well, now there's so many people producing dance music compared to like even 5 years ago. it's become so much more accessible that so many more records are coming out, and with classifications, with like from Beatport, people searching for those tunes, the genres now like might be able to help them find what they're looking for easier. But I think overall, yeah, it's not necessarily beneficial, because like if everyone could just unite under like one, like you were saying, just one genre like trance, it would be a lot easier and more accessible for fans, I think.
Because what's confusing to me with this, I guess Armin said it on A State of Trance multiple times when he's had people on, the phenomenon of psytrance. If you look on Beatport, it's a separate thing away from trance. There's trance, and then there's a psytrance, and I'm just like...
Yeah, I don't get that.
So, I mean, for people that are just slowly getting into any form or all forms of electronic dance music, and they are wanting to find new music and maybe find classics and kind of really the whole thing, when you make it under 50 different categories, it's like... I mean, I understand evolution in music. Obviously, we all get sick of listening to the same thing over and over again. But why can't we... To me, it's just frustrating that it's creating this... Like, we have to, like... We're not included if we don't like this psytrance. Or if you're something different if you like Euphoric over Cold Harbor's Dark Sound. Or, you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely, yeah.
It's... I guess I'm just sick of people just telling people what to listen to and what not to listen to.
It becomes like pockets or groups of fans. Instead of like just overall being a trance fan, yeah, they only like maybe progressive trance, like maybe some slower tempo, like Injuna style trance.
Yeah.
But also, if you think about it, that music is a lot different than psytrance. There's different sounds. The arrangements are different, so from that aspect, yeah, I can get it too. But that's one of the unfortunate things about this genre of music is it's set up in a way that can divide the scene with that mindset that I only like this type of trance, and the scene really needs the support from everyone to thrive, because other genres of music have massive marketing power behind them, and they're on the radio all the time, and they're being pushed by the labels. But some of these trance releases, they just don't have that marketing money behind them, like the huge music labels like Sony, things like that. So it really relies on the fans to make that music popular, to go out and search for that music. So, yeah, I'm really hoping that that divide will obviously dwindle. I've seen that happen in Seattle. Now, they used to talk about, we have the Seattle Trance family, they used to talk about how, I only like, tech trance. No, I only like slow, progressive music. But now, like, through communication and networking and like building community on that fan page, and at the venues and at the parties and at the shows, building community and avoiding negative talk, like they've really built something special, and they've cultivated a thriving scene with like multiple shows, flying in like world famous DJs every week. And what they've done there is something that I would love to see spread all over, building that sense of community over trance, not just like one genre of trance.
Right, because like we were talking earlier, people have their opinions now of Above and Beyond and the Agena label, and then they have their sub-label Agena Deep that's more house, techno vibe, which is great. I mean, we all evolve, and there's sounds that I mean, obviously I'm not just a trance fan, but why do people have to point out to other people, oh, because they're considered this? It's like you put them in that category and they can't change, or they can't evolve, or they can't come from something and be in that. I mean, I understand people are kind of saying that because Above and Beyond had their show Trance Around the World, and then they switched it to now it's group therapy, and then they play stuff that isn't necessarily specifically trance. But why do certain people within the trance family have to point out to somebody, oh, that's house, that's not trance, or whatever? I mean, instead of let that person decide what they like. Like I said, music is subjective. So, why? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wish I could answer that. There's no answer, unfortunately.
I mean, that's just an example. I've heard it about many people.
Fans are very, very opinionated. Which is a good thing, because that shows they're passionate about the music. So, if they could bring that passion with the sense of community, they'd be unstoppable. And instead of like saying to someone like, no, you should only like trance, like tech trance, psych trance, maybe show them instead. That's what we do with our radio show, Inspire. Sean and I named it Inspire because we select tunes that are inspirational to us, that give us that feeling of, oh, I want to find the next trance record that sounds like this, like I did back in the day. We find tunes that inspire us. And instead of like saying, no, you can only like this, we're saying, check this out, you might like this. And we play everything on that show, like vocal trance, tech trance, uplifting trance, psych trance, slower progressive trance. That's the right mindset, I think. But obviously, this is a global scene. There's all kinds of mindsets.
Right.
Yeah.
So we kind of skipped over it. So that's how you spoke about how you found trance. So leading up, so what made you decide, trance? I want to produce it. I want to make it. I want to that. And how did you and Sean meet? Because I know you guys are Sean and Xander, but maybe a lot of the listeners, this is the first time they're hearing about what you guys do. So
right. So Sean and I both went to Western Washington University. We're fellow Vikings, and that's up in Bellingham in Washington State. So we met together at school, and naturally following my passion for finding the next record, I got into DJing because I saw what they did live. I was like, wow, this is too cool. And then you take all the records that you like, and then you're like, oh, I'm gonna start mixing them together because this is so awesome. And then you got like one endless set of like music that you love. So that was like the natural progression from finding records, was like mixing them together, the art of DJing. While on the other side, my friend Sean was being trained classically as a musician, and he had a program called Fruity Loops, which is now called FL Studio.
Yeah.
And a mutual friend of ours was like, yo, Alex, you're into music. Sean's like really into music. You guys should link up. And then so we met each other, and we're like, well, I gave him a CD with like a bunch of tracks on. I think it was like 2008 or something. Obviously, there's a lot of like Armin, Ferry Corsten, Marcus Schultz on there, and then he was like, "Oh wow, this stuff is sick." So the natural progression was, like we would DJ some college parties together, and then we would meet up and start messing around in FL Studio. That's the DAW we use, and we would be messing around with like synthesizers, and it was rough to start, like anybody, producing music. We're learning as we go. There was fewer videos on YouTube tutorials now that there are now, obviously, because this was quite a few years ago, and it just progressed from there. We played more like parties together. We would learn to produce, and we are the guys basically that instead of growing up and getting a safe job, we decided to continue to follow our passion for trance and continue to produce, and we followed that passion all the way to.
So you met? I mean, I haven't met Sean personally yet. Hopefully, I will. But you mentioned he was classically trained. So was he like his degree was in music or some sort of music composition or?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And what
what
instruments is he?
He's got 3 college degrees.
Oh, jeez.
And I have 2, so we have.
I have 1. I'm the.
I was actually waiting a year. After I graduated, I was waiting an extra year for him to graduate so that we could step our producing up to the next level. But he got another degree in Chinese.
What?
This guy, he's
insane. Okay, so but what instruments? I don't know. Maybe I can talk to him about it. But
right, I think he was in band back in the day, like so many people. Yeah, and I would need to double check with him and see.
Okay, well,
he played.
It was just interesting you mentioned that because, see, part of my passion, if people don't know, for music is, yes, I have played saxophone for at least 17 years and into college, but that wasn't my major. That was just what I love to do. I just grew up loving it. I first was dancer, and then I was in sports, and then I ended up taking up, music. But part of it is knowing, like, the music history of things. So I understand theory, and I understand that part. But I also, the other part of me loves the fact that people that don't study that and just create as well. Because I feel like both are great, but if you're classically trained, you have a different way of looking. Things have to be lined up perfectly. As opposed to someone who doesn't really know music theory, just knows what they can hear and what they like. Do you find that you guys, is that why you guys complement each other? Because he comes from like theoretical composition, that's what he comes, and then you came from, not that I'm saying that you haven't studied music theory, but I'm just, from what it sounds like, you had kind of a different approach to it.
Right, yeah. Growing up, I took piano lessons and had recitals like that, but I was probably like 7, 8, and 9 years old at the time. And then after that, I think I had like 1 or 2 music courses in college, so I'm not like trained to like compose things with like all the perfect chord progressions that are according to one specific scale. Or I'm not classically trained, but I think I know what sounds good. Right. Yeah, and Sean is classically trained, so I think of it like in the sense of like how I studied exercise science. I know what it was like when I was working out with no degree in exercise science. So I just like did what felt right, the exercises. But then as I studied exercise science, I was like, well, you need to do this many sets, this many reps, this much rest, to achieve this physiological change, basically. And writing music is like very similar in the sense that you want to do like what feels right, but then also knowing what chord combinations can produce what sound and emotion is another skill set. So yeah, bringing those things together, I think, is a win, because you approach it from different mindsets as well. When I learned exercise science, like some exercises to me became like, maybe I don't want to do that exercise. They became like not as good as they once were compared to this other thing. If you're classically trained as well, that might set those limitations up where you can only follow these specific rules. You have to follow the rules. Whereas if you don't have that background, you might make that decision that is like more out of the box.
Right.
I think both approaches are very important. I think it's important to know what you're doing, but I also think it's important to have few as possible limitations on what you're doing.
So you mentioned exercise science. Is that one of your degrees?
Yeah.
What is your other degree?
Business management.
Okay. So, I mean, like I speak about, I mean, obviously, I guess people know that either you know or you don't know that I had like a media emphasis and my path is different. But you mentioned not having one of those traditional jobs. So, do you think it's important that you guys have both pursued music in the way you have, despite what we have to fall back on, right?
Yeah, I think it's a hard decision to make because it's the less safe route.
Yeah.
There's no guaranteed success. Whereas if you work hard in a corporate position, you'll probably get a raise. Whereas if you work hard as a musician, you might never get a record signed. So there's a lot of unknowns. So it's definitely not the safe route to go. But, and Sean agrees with me because we talked about this a lot, you only get one life, and we feel like it's most important if you use that one chance to follow what you're most passionate about. Otherwise, I'm not exactly sure what the whole point the point is. You only get one shot.
Yeah.
This is what we love, so this is really what we wanted to do.
Awesome. So let's kind of transition. I mean, that's kind of like your background, but we were kind of talking about, you mentioned trance family, so we talk about how global the trance family has gotten, how passionate we are as fans, obviously. And I guess that leads to why people have opinions about what genre to listen to or who to listen to. So people have been saying that trance has been coming back for how many years now? 5 years? Mm-hmm. To me, it never left because I've been listening to trance for 20 years or something.
Right.
So why do you think that it seems for a lot of people who are just getting into dance music or have been in other genres of dance music, they're either coming over and people are like, oh, you're new, or it seems as if there's such a phenomenon and such because now there's the Dream State brand and there's more trance in the U.S. and even though not that there wasn't before, but people are more noticing it, I guess is the right word. So how do you think we as fans can continue to grow? I mean, we talked about earlier how there's different scenes in different cities and how we need to, how a lot of us are like really passionate and we want to build it, but there needs to be kind of a mutual understanding to move forward.
Right, yeah. Like when I was going to school, I always thought, trance and dance music was more like European because it was way more popular like over in Europe, especially like the UK, things like that. And then it started becoming slowly more popular here, especially with the surge in EDM, which what we used to call was like all of dance music, but now I call it like accessible dance music, if you will, what they play on the radio all the time. So that became much more popular, and so naturally trance got a little of that highlight as well, because it's a genre of electronic dance music. And yeah, that began to grow. I think what's really important to the success of the scene and to get new people in is like the approach of listening to music with an open mindset, which is probably easier said than done. But like, for example, when we used to host those early house parties, people hadn't like really heard of trance before. So they're like, oh, I want to listen to like hip hop. I want this, I want that. But they never like just absorbed the environment of the room and kind of let the music take over them. They never gave it a chance. So I feel like if more people just gave the music a chance, instead of just like having a predisposition about it, just listen to it, they might like it. Same goes for probably anything, like trying a new food, oh, I don't like this, like, you never tried it. Just like, give it a shot. And then building that sense of community that I was talking about before is going to be huge. Not, giving an open mind to all subgenres of trance too, not just like psytrance or something like that.
And do you think because a lot of people are newer to like trance, I guess, just discovering it may be coming because they were big fans of like what is known as hardstyle or drum and bass or techno or whatever other genre may be. So people want to ease them in by saying, oh, here, you'll like this psytrance. And then they're like, oh, that's all I listen to. Is it because they could be coming from another genre that's like it, I guess people have said? I mean...
Could be, yeah. That's why I like those old movie soundtracks with the synthesizers, and maybe that's why trance resonated with me so well. Chord progressions, similar sounds, things like that. Could be if they like drum and bass, that like a particular genre might resonate more with them. Yeah.
Because it just seems to me like a lot of people that are like, oh, well, I like trance and my friend's really into hardstyle, but we're all going to this one festival and I want them to try it. They're always like, well, maybe try this type. And then is that the best way to ease people in, or just let people discover for themselves?
I don't know if there is a best way. There's essentially like infinite ways now with the internet.
Yeah.
So, podcasts, obviously, even like this one, or radio shows. That's how I found a lot of the music that I liked, was listening to the Global DJ Broadcast, or A State of Trance, or Corsten's Countdown, or Club Elite Sessions, things like that. That's how I discovered a lot of music I like. So there's no right way. Now you have Spotify, SoundCloud, there's Pandora, there's infinite ways.
Yeah. Going forward, it's just interesting because, I mean, I've heard people say that trance fans are the most passionate, but maybe it's just me being that I'm part of it. I feel that, why can't we all just like what we like instead of tell each other? I mean, because music as a whole is subjective. I mean, not everybody's going to like what the next person likes.
Right. Very subjective.
Yeah. So it's an art form. It's not, and some may say it's scientific as well. So,
of course, there's specific elements of making music that make it trance, right? Instrumentation, the sounds used.
Right.
Like that.
So, how do we, as a family, not tear each other apart? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Just make everyone feel as welcome as possible. Open-mindedness and avoiding negativity is huge. If people feel welcome, they're probably more likely to, give something a shot. Like if they're at the club for the first time and just hearing trance, they're going to stay longer if they feel like it's a great environment. That's something I love about trance, is because the scene and the environment at the shows is usually awesome. Because those people are really passionate about the music that they listen to. But yeah, being welcoming, avoiding negativity, trying not to talk down at things. I think that speaking negatively about something is not going to do you any good anyways. But It's very pervasive for some reason.
But are we living in a fine line between criticism and negativity, though?
The criticism is usually negative.
So there's no such thing as constructive criticism going in something.
Absolutely, there would be constructive criticism,
but not like, oh, this just sucks, or
yeah,
you stole this, or whatever.
Right. That's how, it's commonly phrased.
Yeah, I guess. It's just,
They're not like, I like this, but it might be done better if it was done like this. That's not usually how the conversation.
No, that's not really what's popular on the net. It's just, it's funny because, so we were talking earlier about the difference between cities and families. And I don't think it comes down to, oh, well, they're LA and they're Hollywood. Of course, you're going to get a lot of shows. But that's kind of how it's happened. But again, the trans family in LA shows up in droves. I mean, I've been to Avalon now multiple times. I've been to Exchange.
Yeah.
I've seen them show up whenever there's a trans. And it's not saying I'm going to show up, but really actually make it happen. We're in Phoenix, and we have our certain events here or there, but it's so few and far between. I just feel like people are, like, discouraged because they're like, oh, it's either the same people they've seen, or they just don't think it's going to continue, so everybody's just like, well, I guess I got to travel to whatever festival. And I'm not saying traveling is bad. I'm just saying not everybody can afford to travel. So
yeah, of course.
It's kind of, we were talking about, we're trying to figure out things for our scene here in Phoenix, but we've seen other successful trans families get things going in other cities, like you mentioned Seattle. So what do you think going forward?
It's all based on passion. Seattle is very successful because there's passionate people and they're connecting with each other. And they're building a sense of community with that passion. And they are doing the things like what we just talked about, like avoiding negativity. They bring that up in the group and they're like, you know what? This has been a thing in the past, like down talking certain types of music, but you know what? We're just going to like avoid that. So try not to do that here, please. And yeah, they've done a great job of coming out to events, even if it might not be their like favorite genre of trance, but like just coming based on that community. That's what really, really helped the scene. That, and there's a few key people that stood behind it and took the chance to book the events that made those opportunities possible for the community to grow behind. Like the Seattle Trance Alliance is one of those. They book shows at the Underground every week, in the sounds of trance, and people were able to use those events as like their home base. They found a home at this club, every Friday night, and there they felt welcome. They felt community. They let the music like become the reason why they would go out. It's like what everybody wants. If you're a fan of a genre of music, you want to be able to go somewhere or have the ability to go to a venue and have a great time. So we can do that here by starting our own events and rallying people together and building a strong sense of community around our common interest, which is trance.
Right. See, because a lot of the complaints I hear sometimes, there's issues, stemming from certain venues always being the same to be booked, and there's some people not liking those venues, to, because of where they're located, the people that may not necessarily be a fan show up and then cause trouble. So then the vibes aren't very mesh because, we're there as a trans family, but because, it's part of a entertainment district in town, that anybody can show up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you want new people to show up so that your scene can grow, so that those people can discover music. But absolutely, I know what you're talking about, how there might be individuals in the club that are, like, not passionate about music, but they're just there to, like, get wasted. And they can subtract from a vibe. That's unavoidable, but you can only focus on the good and building that sense of community. And I think if you get enough of those people in one area, that will stand out versus, like, the random individuals who are just there to cause some trouble or get rowdy, something like that.
So, going forward in building the scene, how do we get people from being only showing up to big names? I mean, if we could get local... I know there's been attempts, and we're still trying, where it's just local DJs who are passionate like yourself, who've been working on their stuff, or maybe they have released a couple tracks here or there, and they have an event, but people just really aren't showing up because they're not the big names that people recognize. How do you think we can combine what's going on in other cities for this scene? Because obviously I'm passionate about everybody getting a fair chance. So how can we prove to people that may not be known?
Right, it's like a snowball.
Yeah.
That starts really small at the top of the hill. And you gotta get that thing rolling. And eventually, if you keep pushing it and people get behind it, the snowball will get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you'll have these massive events, which is what's happening in Seattle. So here, you got a little tiny snowball at the top of the hill. People just need to know that they need to come out and support Trance if they want any events at all. That's that little tiny snowball, the one event. But you get a lot of people to come out for that one event, well, that thing will continue to roll, maybe to the next event, next weekend. And, those people show up again. Maybe there's an event next week instead of a month from now. And so on and so forth. But people just have to show up to support trance in general. Not just like one or two of their favorite DJs, but like if they want to see those DJs, they should be supporting the majority of DJs. Which is easier said than done. If you don't like something, you don't want to go out to it. But I think people in Seattle went out more than just like a DJ. They went out to like connect with their friends who share common interests too. So that goes back to the thing about community we're saying. It's not just the music. They built a community too. The community is based on the music. So yeah, they meeting new friends, more networking together. Then all those people go to the show. They might not necessarily have like their most favorite musical experience, but they'll be hanging out with like people that they like too.
Right.
And then next time, maybe they'll get a show that's their favorite DJ, and then hopefully fans of the other artists will come to that show and support.
Awesome. Well, I mean, it's I guess maybe myself because I'm really passionate about it, but I mean I'm only one person, and so it's hard for me. It's been hard for me because I've been trying to help out, and I'm not the only one. Obviously, there is a group of us here, but again, people pick and choose what they want to support, even with what we have so little of here, and it's hard for me to. It's just been. I guess it's coming out that I'm kind of frustrated about it because I'm just happy that Trance is booked where I don't have to like travel, get on a plane or hop in a car for 5 or more hours. You know what I mean?
That's pretty great.
Yeah. So I just feel like we should. I mean, in reality, Phoenix is now. I guess there was some list that came out. Phoenix, the greater Phoenix area, is now like one of the 6th largest growing cities in the country. So I'm just saying we couldn't be. We shouldn't hinder ourselves from growing.
Right.
Because people travel to other cities to see stuff.
Something about those West Coast scenes too is those are more like dense populated areas. So there's just naturally gonna be more trance fans per, like square footage of area. There's just more people there, basically. So the more people the city can support, like the more trance fans will be in there, basically. So yeah, as Phoenix grows, I'm certain the trance scene will grow. But there's a way to build those events with the people that are here now. That's what, like that strong community and networking.
Awesome. So I know you've been working on music, and there's stuff that hasn't been released, or you're working on stuff. But what if people haven't heard of you or work to do? Where should we find you online?
That's a great question. We're actually just about to build a Sean and Xander website.
Nice.
But right now we are on Facebook. We're on SoundCloud. We're also on iTunes, Pandora, Spotify.
Cool.
Any of the major music outlets we're on. SoundCloud is a big one for us because we're able to post our weekly radio show there. So there is literally over 87 hours of trance music on our SoundCloud alone.
Nice.
Yeah, you can go back and listen to every radio show we've ever made. So you can go to one playlist and click play, and you'll have 87 hours of non-stop music. So that's a pretty big one for us. We're also on Twitter, etc. But my music partner's calling me right now. That's awesome. I'll answer after.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I just wanted to sit down and chat. We've been chatting about this, and beginning of a new year means like trying to work on my podcast more. But I just wanted to chat about trance and with somebody who is passionate like myself. I mean, I'm not the only one that I've had on my podcast that is trance related, but it's fun because just like anything, to other people it could sound as a totally different language. But it's nice just to sit down and talk about something that I found that helps and is inspiring. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Today's sponsor is Audible.com, who has more than 180,000 audiobooks and spoken word audio products. Get a free audiobook of your choice at www.audibletrial.com/trendingtopicswithBeebe.